In this video, we're going to take a look at factoring trinomials where a equals 1. Steps for factoring trinomials are that we factor out a greatest common factor first if possible, because you always want to look for that first. Then we multiply the a value times the c value. We figure out what our signs are, and then we list the factors of a times c to figure out what we'll add or subtract to equal the b. Then you can check your answer by multiplying it back together with the FOIL method or the box method. So what do we mean by all of these a's and b's and c's? It's when we have a trinomial that's in standard quadratic form, which is ax squared, and let me write that as a lowercase a, ax squared plus bx plus c. That's what all these a's and b's and c's are referring to. So it says in the next box, when the last number, which is your c, your constant, is positive, then the signs in your parentheses are both going to be the sign of the first sign. So that means that first sign that you see written between the terms. So for number 1, we can see that the c value is positive. So that means both of our factors are going to be positive. That's how you apply that little trick. And then we need to figure out what will multiply to give us a times c, which is 1 times 6. So 1 times 6. We got to figure out what would multiply to give us 6. And at the same time, what numbers would add up to give us the b value, which is 5. So 6 is our a c value, and 5 is the b value. And you take the signs and use them as they are. So 6 comes from a few things. 1 times 6 would give us 6, and 2 times 3 would give us 6, because we know they both have to be positive, so we're not worried about negatives right now. And then 1 plus 6 would equal 7, so then those two won't work. So 2 times 3 are the ones that work. And there won't ever be more than one pair of numbers that truly work for your factors, so you want to make sure you get the right ones. So we always put x in the first term of our parentheses, because we would want to be able to multiply that back together again to get that x squared value. And then we put in these numbers in any order, so 2, 3, or you could have put 3 and then 2. But then those are the factors of our trinomial. So we're finished with number 1. Let's do another one. For number 2, I can see that I have no greatest common factor because a just equals 1. And I skipped over that part for number 1, but let me go back and mention that when we have an a value of 1, there won't be anything more we could take out. So I can see for number 2, there's no greatest common factor, but we do always want to check for that. And then we want to say our last term is positive again. So our signs will be the same as the first sign. So they're both going to be a minus. And you can always go ahead and put your variable in place for those first 2 terms of your binomial factors. Then we're going to take our a times c, which is 1 times 15. And 1 times 15 is 15. And then we got to multiply to get that value and add up to get the b value, which is negative 8. Notice we do put the negative with the 8. So let's look at numbers that would multiply to give us 15. So we have 1 times 15, 3 times 5. And so we'd also need to have both of these be a negative. So then we can tell negative 3 and negative 5 would be the pair that would help us add up to get negative 8. So I like to write them here and double check my math. So negative 3 times negative 5 does give us positive 15. And then negative 3 plus negative 5 does give us negative 8. And then over here, we just write those in our factors. And that's it for a factored form of this trinomial. Let's look at a few more. So we have x squared minus 12x plus 20. When a equals 1, we know we don't have a greatest common factor anywhere, any more than 1. So we don't need to take anything out. So let's set up, we see our last term is positive. So that means both of our signs are going to be the same as the first term. So they're both going to be negative. Let's put x for our first term. And then let's do the work of figuring out the numbers we need. So a times c would be 1 times 20. So we got to multiply to get 20. And then we need to add up to get b, which is negative 12. So we know that both of them are going to be a negative, and we need to look at factors that would give us 20. So -1 times -20, -2 times -10, 3 won't go, 4, so -4 times -5, and then 6 doesn't work, 7 doesn't work, 8 doesn't work, 9 doesn't work, and then you're back to 10, which you've already listed. So out of these options, I can see that these two in the middle would add up to give us the -12, and then the others would not add up to give us what we need. And we always want to make sure we're able to do both. They multiply to give us 20, and then they're going to add to give us the -12. So then put them in place. It doesn't matter which one you write first, but I'm going to put the 2 and then the 10. So that is it for number 3. Let's look at number 4. So once again, A is just equal to 1, which for all of these, that's the case. So we're not going to have a greatest common factor. So let's go ahead and set up our last term as positive. So we can say that both of our factors are going to have a plus sign, because that's the first sign in our trinomial. And we take the A of 1 times the C value of 55. So 1 times 55 is 55. And then we need to add our numbers to get B, which is 16. So let's figure out numbers that'll multiply to give us 55. And they're both going to be positive numbers. So let me take this opportunity to show you something in your calculator. You can actually find factors of numbers in your calculator. So the ones we've worked with so far aren't very big, but 55 is a pretty big number. So you go to y equals, and you can type in the number you need factors for. So that's 55, and then hit divided by x, and then pull up your table of values, which is second graph. And what's listed here are all the factors of 55. And I can just pick them out and write them on my paper. So I got 1 times 55. Ignore the ones with decimals because we don't need those. So I'm going to skip down to 5 times 11. And then notice I come back to 5 times 11 again. So then that would help me if I don't know factors of 55 or larger numbers. I can have my calculator help me pretty quick to figure them out. So I'm going to let's put them over here. So 1 times, or excuse me, we have to add up to get 16. So out of these two options, 5 and 11 would definitely help more than 1 and 55. So 5 times 11 gives us 55, and 5 plus 11 will give us 16. So let's put m plus 5, m plus 11. And then that would be it for our factors of this trinomial. So let's look at some other types. So this next rule says when your last number is negative, or your C value is negative, then the signs in the parentheses are different, and you want to give the larger number the sign from the middle term. So let's take a look at an example of this. So in this one we have y squared plus y minus 56. So we know the signs are going to be different. And then we know the middle is plus, so this is going to need to be our larger number. So let's figure out A times C. So 1 times -56 gives us -56. And then we need to add up to get the B value. And in this case, that's just an understood 1. So -56 is a pretty big number. We can use our calculator trick again to help us out. So let me show you that again. Let's go to y equals, clear that out, and type -56 divided by x. Then hit second graph to pull up the table of values. And let's see. There we go. That looks better. So let's write them out. Factors of -56. And we have 1 times -56. We have 2 times -28. We have 4 times -14. Let's see, scroll down. We got 7 times -8. And then 8 times -7. We can write that, but we've really already written the 7 and the 8. And remember, we have a rule to think about our larger number. The larger number has to go with the middle sign. So that means that our values we need is the larger one has to be positive. So the 8 and the -7 are going to work because both of them multiply to give us -56, but 8 plus -7 would add up to be a +1. So that would mean y plus the larger number, which is 8, and then y minus 7 are our factors. So let's try that method again. So when the sign is negative, you're going to have different signs in your binomials, and the larger number needs to go with the sign of b. So I know this needs to be the larger number when I figure out my factors of a times c. So 1 times -7 gives us -7, and then b is -6. So we got to multiply to get -7, and we got to add up to get -6. So 7 is not such a big number. Let's think about 7 comes from 1 times 7, and then that's about it. So your larger number has to be the negative. So let's put 7 is negative, because -7 times 1 gives us -7, but notice -7 plus 1 gives us -6. So that rule helps us out. So m plus 1 and m minus 7 would be the correct way to write our factored form. All right, so let's take a look at a few more. So number 3, we have a negative for our third sign, or the value of c. So we're going to have different signs in our factors. And then our larger number needs to go with the sign of b. So I'm just going to write that down again. Our larger number is going to be the negative number. So take a times c. So that would be -24. And we got to figure out what will multiply to give us -24 and add up to be b, which is -5. So if you just think about factors of 24, you don't really have to think about the negative because you're going to put it with the larger number once you figure out factors that'll help you get 5 when you add them up. And so we have 1 times 24, we have 2 times 12, we have 3 times 8, 4 times 6, and then we'll start to repeat ourselves. So 3 and 8, notice, have a difference, like they're 5 apart from each other. So those are the numbers we need, and you're going to give the larger number the negative. So 3 times -8 will give us -24, and notice 3 plus -8 will give us -5. It works. So we have x plus 3 and x minus 8, since 8 is the larger number. All right, so let's look at number 4. Our last number is negative, so our signs of our factors are going to be different. And then the larger number needs to be the negative number, since b is negative. All right, so let's take a times c again, which will be -40. We want to multiply to get -40 and add up to get b, which is -3. But we already know our larger number is going to be our negative number. So let's just try to list factors that would give us 40. So we have 1 times 40, 2 times 20. Let's see, 3 doesn't go evenly. 4 times 10, 5 times 8, 6 won't go evenly, 7 won't go evenly, and then we're back to 8. So then we just need to find numbers that are 3 apart from each other. So 1 and 40 are way too far apart, and 2 and 20 are 18 apart, and 4 and 10 are 6 apart, but 5 and 8 are just right because they're 3 away from each other. Then we know to give the larger number the negative sign because we've already written that over here for ourselves. So let's say 5 and make it a -8 to give us that -40. So 5 times -8 and 5 plus -8 are our magic numbers. So let's put g plus 5, g minus 8. All right, so I believe that is it for factoring trinomials where a equals